what is religion
and what is culture.
Yeah, and what is culture. And before going on, I would almost say that they're almost cannot be separated. I mean, they're so closely intertwined that it's very difficult to see a distinction. It's a sense of something holy, something beyond me, something, we use the word transcendent, which doesn't mean up in the air, doesn't mean in the sky, it means beyond my life. There is some things.
It did not intend to or want to change the way of people's living, but to the way they used to believe. The beliefs and then the practices, that is the point, they were or supposed to be differently practiced, or maybe the practice or the religion or the belief, they were segregated by definition. Would you agree on that?
Christianity per se is any longer in its kind of pure form, but it has also embraced. So there is the good, bad and the ugly.
Exactly.
With the cultural kind of, you are born into
that
this,
right.
And you want to be part of it and not part of it.
Roman Catholic Christianity, the clothes the priest wears, the words he says, his style, even the doctrines.
Okay.
As I think Dr. Shanti already indicated earlier, we've borrowed from Roman and from Greek ways of thinking. Their cultural patterns have come into what we call Roman Catholicism. Even the word Roman is still there. You see, Roman Catholicism, a Roman.
In this part of the world, half the population, when I walk on the street, that I meet, they call me Assalamu alaikum. I call back and say Wa alaikum salam. They think I am a Punjabi.
Exactly.
But in fact, until I open my mouth,
that's right,
then they know.
Religious mythology is very important and very beautiful and very helpful.
Okay.
And it's in every religion. In Christianity,
there are many things being mentioned in the Bible that the Son of God, this word, and you also have interpreted it to be the beloved of God, the one who is quite very near to the God, beloved, near. But some people have taken it to be literal.
Then religion is also mythological, and it doesn't make it less true. It makes it more true for me. It makes it acceptable as a profound truth beyond me.
We need the myth. Without it, it is so tasteless. If it is only literary format, and is that all about us?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Dr. Omer Farooq Saeed with another episode of Rational Reflections. Dear viewers, today we have a very important topic and indeed a couple of very important guests as well. As a matter of fact, they are joining me for the third time and I'm really thankful to them. Both have been 10-year professors in their own fields. One is from Australia, one is from Sri Lanka, and have been working in the fields that we have discussed before as well. But today the topic, let me introduce something which has to do with religion and culture. We understand that religion and culture both are somehow integrated with each other, both are connected to each other, but to what extent? That is the big question, $1 million question. To what extent they are connected, to what extent they should be connected to each other, and as a matter of fact, are they any different or should they be different? For that particular reason, first of all, I would like to welcome my guest on the right, Dr. Herman Roborgh. Welcome again in the show. Thank you so much for your time. And on my left, Dr. Shanthikumar Hettiarachchi. Welcome again in the show.
Thank you.
It's been really nice to have you again. And getting straight to the topic, as Dr. Herman, you have been teaching. You have that kind of experience of years and years, and you have been in different cultures, which is the most important part in the discussion today, that we need to understand that what in your experience and then in what in your reading is religion and culture and what they have to do with each other. What have you you have concluded after so many years?
Yes, it's true. I have been living in different cultures in different countries. I spent my early education was in Australia, and then I spent close to 20 years in Indonesia. Mm-hmm. And then I've been here in Pakistan to also about 20 years, I think, something like that. And I actually come from Europe. My family comes from Europe, so I have that background as well. So yeah, in every place the culture is different and the religion is also different. And because of the culture, the religion is different.
Exactly.
And because of religion, the culture is different. So I think we need to, well, I would like to examine, first of all, the meaning of these words, rather than try and see the connection. What are we talking about, really? You know, what is religion?
And what is culture?
Yeah, and what is culture? And before going on, I would almost say that they're almost cannot be separated. I mean, they're so closely intertwined that it's very difficult to see a distinction, I think, because both are products of human mind and human interaction, human experience over the years, over products of time also, products of generations of practice and engagement. And that's where culture comes from, and that's where religion comes from as well. Religion is, well, I could give my definition, but I mean, is that what you want now or later on?
We'd like to hear it. Yeah.
Well, no, perhaps not a definition, but to clarify, I would say that we have to be very careful and not think that religion is kind of some monolithic. Monolithic means of one shape or one form. Religion is something which is probably different for every person. We tend to think there are 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 religions in the world, something like that. That's a way of speaking. But I think every person's religion is different. Even though we are, for instance, we are Christians or we are Muslims. Every Muslim is different. Every Christian is different. You can't say that the religion of Islam, we talk that way, the religion of Islam, we talk that way, the religion of Christianity. But what are we really saying? I mean, it's just, we're saying that there are certain things we do in common, certain things that maybe we believe or that we accept. That's probably as far as it goes. But even those things that we say we believed together or in common, even those things, if we really start talking to each other, we find that we have different views, different opinions, sometimes we get emotional quite easily about religious topics, certainly, even cultural topics as well, when we start talking about them. So that shows that we are involved in these things, in these issues, or in these realities called religion and culture in different ways. And they cause a lot of discussion and a lot of interaction. And that's how religion develops even further. By the interaction, by the discussion, religion moves on and takes new shapes and new forms in different places and different people.
So what I have understood, Dr. Shanti, from what Dr. Herman talked about, like religion, or to be specific, the religious practice would be or should be different for each individual, no matter what religion they are following. But a question might arise: how do we perceive, or how do these people perceive religion and culture to be? It is to be understood that how people living in a particular culture would perceive religion, and as we know that they are different denominations with different cultures, and their people do perceive it differently. So why is that? That is a question.
Human beings are born free.
Okay.
That means they de facto they born free of any, bound by nothing. But it is after being born that one becomes part of this through socialization and over generation after generation. But some circumstances through communication and imitation, and also by cohesion as well. For example, female circumcision by cohesion.
Mostly African.
Yes. And then child marriage. That's enforced. Cultural enforcement. So we are born free, but by association, we become part of this. So in that sense, culture is both transmitted and learned. But talking about, going back to Dr. Herman's kind of narrative, that there is no religion that is not born within a culture. Therefore, religion is culturally, in the sense, biased.
Okay.
So you take the biblical tradition. It is by language, it is a Semitic language, but it is Hebrew.
Right.
Texts are in Hebrew and later translated both into Greek and Latin. So also in the Arabian Peninsula, the Prophet of Islam, that revelation comes to him in his own language, probably a dialect in Arabic, not necessarily the dialect that is spoken currently. So it is born into that cultural language of the Bedouins in the peninsula. And therefore it is that revelation has to be spoken through a particular language, particular culture. So also are the rest of the religions world across. That is why it is difficult sometimes. I agree with some of the Muslims and Hebrews speaking Jews that it is so difficult to translate from one culture to the other. How much of that original nuance can you get in a modern language is a big question.
Right.
That is why I understand the rigidity of some of those Semitic languages that the scholars have continued to harp on this, to be faithful to the classical part of it, not necessarily modernize it. If we have the translations of the Bible in all kinds of ways, you can have that as an easy access. But then the original language remains, and the downside of it, Omer, is that language is also limited.
Okay.
It has its own limitation.
Right.
Because it is culturally limited.
Right. So that will also I would like to make one thing, the point which is basically mentioned right from the start, that whenever a religion or a new religion, of course, if you talk about the Jewish religion, the Christian religion, or for that matter Islam as well, on those days when the religion was being revealed or was being introduced newly to the society, to the culture, the religion didn't tend to change the way of living of people, or didn't tend to or want to change the culture of people, or more to make them believe, or more to make them implement their beliefs in a different way, only the beliefs, but their way of living didn't change much. Would you agree on that it stayed the same, or religion impacted their lives to the extent that it almost transformed into something else, into something different?
No, I don't think it makes much sense to say that religion impacted their lives, as if religion is something. You see, you're making religion into something, which I denied at the beginning. It's not some monolithic thing which drops from the skies, drops from heaven or something, and impacts on it's our response to the sacred. Now, I've come out with a little definition, which we can develop, of course. But in my view, all human beings have a sense of the sacred. Call it the holy, if you wish, the holy, the sacred. Call it religiosity or something like that. Call it feelings. These are all words we can use. But it's a sense of something holy, something beyond me, something, we use the word transcendent, which just doesn't mean up in the air, doesn't mean in the sky. It means beyond my life. There is something, but yeah, again, not something necessarily, but we say thing, but I'm not saying some object. I'm just saying there's a reality outside or beyond me, and religion is my response to that reality. That's what I would understand as religion. And your response to that reality is different. And so we make our own religion. I think. So I think that's there's some common ideas that religion is coming to us from outside. I don't think that's very helpful. Something does come from outside. I said myself, there's something beyond me. So I'm not saying I create the whole thing myself. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying I respond to that sense of the holy. And that's my response is a very important aspect of religion. In fact, I would say the most important aspect. We can talk in a religious way or theologically and say that God sent the prophets. Okay, but then we responded to them. and that's religion. It's our response to the prophets. It's not just the prophets. It's not the prophets only. I mean, God has sent thousands of prophets, and that's not religion. Religion is what we make of it, what we have understood and what we put into practice. And that's different from place to place.
Exactly. Like how people believed in the message.
Yes,
That is the point.
yes.
But also, Dr. Shanti, like we have also the same question in a different way, that maybe there were some regions where religion was foreign, like a foreign religion, or the people landed from a different place, bringing in different religion and different culture. But it somehow got integrated into that society as well. People were welcoming, sometimes they were not. So that phenomenon that happened at that time, when the religion was being revealed, as it said in the beginning, at that time, religion, talking about, it did not intend to or want to change the way of people's living, but to the way they used to believe. The beliefs and then the practices, that is the point, they were or supposed to be differently practiced, or maybe the practice or the religion or the belief, they were segregated by definition. Would you agree on that?
Yeah, yes and no. Omer, is that, religions didn't stay in the places where they were born. They had to cross.
Exactly.
Because crossing meant they have to declare that the message is universal. And if the message is universal, it cannot be just landing on the place where it had been born.
Of course.
And the very fact of universality means that it must cross the borders. And that has taken a whole heap of dynamism and evolutionary patterns. So it went out into the diaspora. Just like now. There are 35 million Indians outside Hindustan.
Right.
35 million. That's a population of certain countries.
More than that.
Entire population.
Exactly.
And definitely more than the population of Sri Lanka. Just Indians outside. So, and it went with this cultural, if I want to use the word baggage. It was born in the Hebrew land, but it had to cross to the Greek world. So Greeks didn't understand, so Greek had to translate the scriptures. And then, of course, you found the Romans, the Latins. The Latins had to understand what is this new phenomenon that had come up. And Judeo-Christian, they had to be read in Latin. So they translated the text into Latin. And every time the new step been taken, new things, that which is Roman added into that which is Greek added into that. So it's not necessarily Christianity per se is any longer in its kind of pure form, but it has also embraced. So there is the good, bad, and the ugly.
Exactly.
With the cultural kind of, you are born into this,
right.
And you want to be part of it and not part of it. So we play that kind of domino.
Well, for that we need to discuss the baggage of culture as well, for that matter. If you can discuss religion, let me quote an experiment, a scientific experiment, by the way, to understand what culture is, how culture develops. So there was an experiment been done when 12 monkeys, apes were used, and they were locked up in one room. And inside the room, they placed a ladder in center of the room. And on the top of the ladder, they placed some bananas, which monkeys like to eat, of course. And quite naturally, they will go at the top and try to eat it. But what they did, they used to shower down water on the monkeys whenever they'll try to go up to grab the banana. So now the monkeys were not liking it. Of course, no one likes to get wet. So slowly they realized that whenever we go at the top, the water comes down. So we better don't go up. So they stopped going up. Now what they did, they replaced 6 of those monkeys with a new batch of monkeys. The 6 old ones and now the 6 new ones. The new ones didn't know what's going on, what was going on in the room. They didn't know. They tried to go up to the ladder and try to grab the banana. And the old ones knew what was happening, and they started beating up the new batch. Don't go up. They didn't know why they are beating us. It's just a banana. I want to go up and just take it. Why they are beating us? They knew what happened. Now what happened? They replaced the older batch as well. Now another new one came, 6 and 6, and they are new. They didn't know what the hell was happening in the room. Now the previous batch, which didn't know why were they being beaten for taking the banana, but they knew that the monkeys which were before, they did the same. And whenever the new batch used to come, they used to beat them. No one knows what's happening. No one knew why is it happening, but they kept on doing it. That's how they realized culture doesn't have anything to do with what you believe in, but what is being done before you just tend to follow it. That is how culture is being made. So that was being scientifically interpreted. I would like to ask, would you agree that culture is just the amalgam of practices which is being done before you, and you can very well believe it to be the culture?
Again, I think that's a bit too simple. Just an amalgam of forces that have been that you've inherited. That's exactly what you seem to say.
Exactly.
I think we have our own, as you began to say, we are free, and we have our own input. Each person and each group has its own input, has its own contribution to make to the inheritance that we have received. I do believe that it's a response. I said before that religion is a response to people, to prophets, not to something, but to people who've come. If I may go back to religion for a moment, all religions started with individuals, call them prophets or call them something else. That's not, for me, that's not a point. Sages or whatever. But religions, as far as I know, have started with some person who was inspired and who developed a new idea, a new way of life. And people started responding to that. And then a religion was created that way. Religion was created. And I don't see that as very different from culture. Culture is a response. But of course, religion is a response more to the holy, to the sacred. We could make a limitation there. Whereas culture is a response to a wider variety of situations, like even how you eat and how you wash and how you talk to people and how you dress. That's all a response, isn't it? And it's not only just what I've inherited, but I look at the way modern people dress. It's new fashions coming out and new hairstyles, etc. People have their own interpretation and then create other responses. And so it's a mixture of contribution and inheriting what other people before me have said and done.
Exactly. So now there is a very simplified question, and I believe the answer would not be so simplified, I know. But are we people, as you said, we are born free. Can we be free of culture? Or should we have to be the slaves of culture?
I think when I said born free, is if you take a baby is just born free. But the fact is, baby is born to mother and father who is born and lived in a culture which is dynamic and not static, but evolving. They become part of that evolved culture.
Right.
Therefore, they think that we have an entity within us, that we have a framework, and that framework should be a guide now.
Okay.
Not only we as parents are guides and teachers, Dr. Herman, but also what we have in some form kind of smelled through our parents. So it is by association. So some things that are good, that we have enjoyed culturally, we want to share that with our little one. And from that moment, that child, whether male or female, adapts the mannerisms, the symbols, the folklore, the stories, the narratives of that culture, and say, hey, hang on, you are a Hindu, but I am a Christian. How come you are a Hindu and I'm a Christian? Well, my parents are Christians. Okay. And how about you? Well, my parents were Hindus. But then it's not just Hindu. It's the Vaishnavite Hindu. There is another subculture. Now, different subcultural framework has been innovated. But Vaishnavite in where? Which country? Vaishnavite in Sri Lanka or South India? Then there is another whole gamut of cultural requirements of a Vaishnavite or a Shaivite in Sri Lanka and Shaivite in South India, Tamil Nadu. Two difference. They speak the same language, but they will worship in a quite different way. So it's the same way you take any other. So we belong to a particular religious tradition. We say Hindu, but it's not enough. It's not enough. What kind of Hindu are you? What kind of Hindu are you? It is and that is where exactly, Omer, that cultural patterns come in to define yourself. So you are not just a Hindu, but you are a Gujarati speaking Hindu. And which means you are from the state of Gujarat, which means culture has defined you. Religion has given you, provided you new identity of being a Gujarati Hindu than a Bihari Hindu.
Exactly. That was a very important point which Dr. Shanti raised. And we need to discuss some examples as well now. For example, one thing came to my mind during Dr. Shanti was mentioning a very important example. One example is of like how we have, as you said, that we have inherited many things from the ancestors and then it continued on. But for some reason that some of the practices which are from religion are supposed to be considered from religion, but they, as a matter of fact, are not a part of religion. And one example comes to my mind of the Santa Claus. You believe, and I think it's not mentioned anywhere in the Bible, but people do believe in him religiously, don't they? They do believe in him religiously. That it's a religious figure or somewhere here, is to be considered one to be. So how did that happen? Or why did that happen?
Well, I mean, the Santa Claus he was a bishop actually in Holland.
Okay.
And Zwarte Piet, he was his servant. And St. Nicholas, Heilige Nicholas, the Dutch. I remember as a child we used to celebrate his feast day, and so it's just a memory of a person. Again, a person. You see, a person who happened to give sweets and gifts to children. That became associated with a period of preparation for Christmas, because Christmas is a time when God shared another prophet, you may say, when he shared Jesus. So Christmas became, this Santa Claus became associated with that. So, but there are so many cultural aspects. That's a cultural thing, which was associated with religion. Yeah, but religion is full of these things. The Santa Claus is just one example.
Exactly.
But I could go on and say that my exposure to different cultures, I think I could say that in my life has made me more aware of how much culture is in my religion, how much my Christian religion is made up of cultural patterns, like Santa Claus, which I dropped years ago, of course, but I respect it as a cultural pattern, but it was fine when I was a child. But there's so many things. Okay, I'm a Roman Catholic. There's so many cultural patterns in the Roman Catholic religion, the Roman Catholic Christianity. The clothes the priest wears, the words he says, his style, even the doctrines.
Okay.
As I think Dr. Shanti already indicated earlier, we've borrowed from Roman and from Greek ways of thinking. Their cultural patterns have come into what we call Roman Catholicism. Even the word Roman is still there. You see, Roman Catholicism. Roman.
Exactly.
So we acknowledge that, and we do notionally, but I would say that perhaps, and many others, of course, but I have become more aware, maybe through my movement and learning different languages and adapting to different cultures, what a big influence this culture has had in my own religion, Christianity or Catholicism, the huge influence that it has. And I've been able to, take a little distance from these things, I think so I could say that I've been able to I'm not rejecting these things, like the way we pray or the formal prayer, what you call namaz, we call liturgy. I have realized that so much of that is also bound up with religion, and it's not really necessary. It's just consoling because I've done it since I was a child. So it's nice to listen and to see and to repeat the same formulas, but it's not necessary to be a Catholic even and to adopt all these practices. This sounds a bit radical, and I don't mean to reject again. Exactly. I'm not rejecting my Catholic practices, but taking a certain distance and realizing that there are more essential aspects, if I may use the word essential, essential aspects, or more important perhaps, or more meaningful aspects of my so-called religion or my faith, which I could stress and which I should focus on rather than these cultural things. And I'm sure that's in Islam too. The sorts of cultural aspects of Islam. Indonesian Islam is different from Pakistani Islam. I've seen it. I've lived there.
That's right.
And so forth. So, and you would admit that Arabic Islam and then go back to Christianity. Look at Christianity in the Philippines. Look at Christianity in Europe. It's so different. And so religion is bound up with culture, and so to become aware of these cultural aspects of religion is a purifying process.
But Dr. Shanti, as we, people like me and you, we come from a very traditional sort of cultures. We take pride in practicing, unlike the Anglo cultures, not talking about, maybe you can't relate very much to it because you've been raised in the different culture, but we can relate to that. So the question arises, now we have seen the world moving on to more liberal practices, somewhere where the practice or the culture takes a backseat. And now the liberal, the people who are supposed to be liberal in their approach, in their daily living, in whatever they do in their lives. So how would you say that how welcoming or unwelcoming we should be to those people or to that ideology of liberalism in our societies, so that the tradition that we used to or have been following is taking the back seat?
That's a very complex question. See, liberal thought had come to us in the development of ideas in history, perhaps from the 17th, 18th centuries, post-Enlightenment uprising, in embarking into logic and scientific rationality, reasoning, all of that. That's actually the birth of liberal thought. But the issue is the most dangerous is not necessarily the liberal thinking, but the postmodern critique of the mega narratives that we have held, religions have held for a very, very long time. What postmodern critique debunks the Judeo-Christian and Islamo birth story, Genesis story, creation story. The issue is you can have a scientific reading of it or a literal reading of it, like some religious traditions think and wish to embrace that narrative. But we can't throw the water and the baby both.
Right.
We had to get the bucket of water and wash the baby. That's fine. But we just cannot throw the baby. So we can throw the dirty water.
Okay.
That's what I am interested in, that we keep the baby. So we cannot allow, we can deploy liberal thinking, liberal thought, and even postmodern helpful parameters for us to kind of deploy in our own thinking and teaching and learning, new learnings, but cannot simply allow the baby to be thrown away. That we must be very careful, especially those of us who are in higher learning and those of us who are in this industry of digital world and AI interventions, that we have to be very, very careful about, that humanity's dignity must be kept untouched.
That is right. But the same thing is coming towards you as well. Like we humans decided for some reason, not very long ago, that we will now be willing to sacrifice our values for the sake of living our lives on the basis of secular values, or should I say secular or liberal world order, or should I say worldview, whatever it is. It should be the better word, where you can also tell me about it. But as we did it, as we took the step forward, and the step was basically taken on the grave of culture for some reason. I would not use the word religion, because religion still manages to survive all the evolution that we have gone through over the past so many years. But while we took that step, I would like to ask that, how would you perceive the human beings now have maybe gone too much into their shelves? Like the world has become literally a digital world, and we are nowhere to be that interactive anymore, or that traditional anymore. How do you perceive this situation to be?
Well, just responding to Dr. Shanti, first of all, my question comes, what is the baby that we have to preserve? It's a good analogy.
And what's the dirty water that we need to throw
get
away?
rid of the dirty water, of course, we'd all agree. But what is that baby? And that's the issue, isn't it? That is the issue, isn't it? And that's the issue that the traditional religions are concerned with. In my own Roman Catholic background, it's happening from time to time that they forbid certain theologians, certain thinkers to speak. Why? Because they're using different language, a different style of presenting the doctrine that has been traditionally handed down. So they think the baby is that expression of language, that linguistic expression of, for instance, of Jesus, about Jesus, who he was, and his mission. And so that was expressed 1,500 years ago. And today we're trying to find new expressions of that reality, of the person of Jesus. But the traditional church is trying to preserve the baby, to keep the baby, but it says that the baby is the formula. And the modern people will say, no, that's not the baby. The baby is something else, is the reality, if you like, the value, if you like, or the person. I keep going back to the person. That would be the baby for me. I know it's an image, it's an image. But so we need to find that. And maybe I can stop here for a moment, but I can go on about that later on if you wish.
Absolutely. But I would like you to tell about your baby.
Yeah, I knew that baby would come back. It's a grand image, but the baby is created by that religious culture, as it used to be. There are no religious cultures anymore, right? There are cultures in which religions function. So religion is a functionary today. It has a very functional aspect in the large gamut of mix of cultures. There is no pure culture anymore. We are now born into, or living our lives in cross-culturally. So if you tell me that this is culture and this is particular Anglo-Saxon, and this is exactly Punjabi, and this is exactly Gujarati, what is it? How am I a Sinhalese? In this part of the world, half the population, when I walk on the street, that I meet, they call me, Assalamu alaikum. I call back and say, Wa alaikum salam. They think I am a Punjabi.
Exactly.
But in fact, until I open my mouth,
that's right,
then they know that I neither speak Punjabi nor Urdu. Then they know, don't you speak any of this? To be culturally connected. I cannot be culturally connected, but as a South Asian, they assume that I am culturally connected.
Exactly.
See, and that is, and I know for sure, when I cannot speak their language, when I cannot speak either either Urdu or Punjabi, I know for sure that I am actually, there is something strange here. But I can be connected because I'm culturally South Asian.
You would have learned Punjabi, by the way. It would have been very nice.
Yes.
Like for that matter, when you used to have a beard, people used to love it here because there is a culture of beard here in Pakistan, in this country. You used to have a little bit of beard and people used to love
beard,
it.
yes,
I used to remember it. So these are some of the things, like it's not a very big thing. It's very simple ways to just make yourself a little connected to the...
Yes, but I think the beard is just as simple, as you said.
Exactly.
Just as simple, not a very
Simple,
important.
yeah.
But the language is very important. That's what I would like to stress. And he's been talking about language, that he can't speak a certain language. And that's true of me. I'm also limited in my language. But the languages I can speak make me feel part of the place, as Dr. Shanti has said very clearly. And I think, so therefore, perhaps we can go to the conclusion that culture is connected with language, very much with language, not just externals like a beard. I think that's trivializing, making it insignificant.
Exactly.
In my view, language is a much more important indicator of culture. It creates feeling. It creates a certain awareness. It creates a sensitivity. It creates understanding. It creates relationship. Language, is the medium of culture. And religion as well. And I think that's why, as I said before, church authorities are holding on to certain formulas. And I think in Islam also. I'm not sure about that. You can correct me.
To some extent.
To some extent.
Yeah.
Of course, to some extent. Everywhere, to some extent. Using, and I'm not criticizing that. I'm just saying this is the reality. We need, language is so important. We need certain words. To be changing words all the time goes back to your question. If you keep changing the words all the time, and you said liberal way of thinking, that any word will do. That's not true either. We can't just change words because of a feeling or just because of inclination. We do have to, there's a certain loyalty to the group. Language is a group awareness, and I have to be loyal to the group whose language I'm using. And so I can't just use these words in my own way. I have to respect the way these words are used. And if it's a cultural group or a church group, a religious group, they have their ways of using words. And language is therefore to be respected and to become aware of the importance of language.
But don't you think that there have been some factions or some, you know it better, which I'm just about to talk about, that here in the cultures that we live in, especially in the South Asian region and the Middle East and these regions, there are some things which are acceptable and some things which are absolutely culturally unacceptable. For example, let me take the example of the LGBTQ culture, the homosexuality, LGBTQ, that culture. But for some reason, some people try to enforce, and I know that these people are mostly on the Western side of the world, that you just have to accept it. It is humanity. It is something that belongs in our nature. So why are you concerned about it? So that ideology or that belief, when it is something they try to enforce culturally on a culture which is not welcoming about such concepts or such ideas, how do you feel that enforcement works, or should it be? Or should it be done in that way?
Enforcement is always wrong, or usually wrong anyway. I don't think there's very few examples would legitimate make enforcing something legitimate. So I don't think certainly your example of homosexuality, gay life, to force that would be not right. But to completely forbid it is also not right, I don't think.
If it is culturally not acceptable.
Well, what do you mean by culturally not acceptable?
Like in this, as you talked about the group. Group.
Oh, I see.
So the group doesn't accept it. The group doesn't.
Then we have to respect that group. I agree.
Right.
I agree. Oh, yes, I agree completely.
Sure.
If I may contribute a little bit, there are cultural taboos, and you are, Omer, talking about cultural taboos, and cultural taboo is a taboo because it is not a taboo that has dawned yesterday. It had been there in practice for some time. So there are reactionary elements within that culture for something like that. For the example that you gave, there will be a cultural opposition to that. contestation, sociological contestation for that, simply because there is a heritage of a taboo within us. And that taboo is sometimes quite linked to religion itself. Because taboo had just not come from nowhere, but it has come through a particular religious interpretation of behavior, interpretation of morality, and because culture is about cultivation, right? So if it is about cultura,
exactly,
what they say in Latin, so it's culture. If it's about cultivation, this is how we have cultivated our group. Therefore, you are another farmer bringing another seed to be planted in this tilted grounds, and that might not be okay.
Yes, I agree. Dr. Shanti brought up the word taboo, which means, as far as I know, something forbidden. Okay, and there are certain things which are forbidden, which we would agree with, like the issue of homosexuality in this culture would be forbidden. It's taboo, and also, for instance, incest. It would be another example.
Right.
Or maybe another example is to go in the street without clothes or something like that would be taboo, right?
Exactly.
So we accept that sort of thing. But there are other taboos which I think we need to criticize. And one example would be, in my experience of living here, is the way that young girls are kept inside the house. And until they are married, they are almost forbidden, taboo to leave the house, except with on certain conditions they can. And that stifles, not every household is the same. In fact, there's a lot of variety, even in Lahore. I admit that. I can see that myself. But there are all kinds of taboos. That's just an example of a taboo. Another taboo is, when somebody dies, you must have a meal to which all the relations are invited, and it's taboo in a sense, because if you don't do it, that's forbidden. Not to do it is forbidden, so you must do it. And a marriage, you must spend lots of money to feed the people
show
again.
Off.
Yeah, it's a kind of a show, isn't it? And I think these are taboos or customs or whatever. You may find another word if you like, but these are customs, cultural customs, which are not life-giving. They're not helpful, and they put people in debt for years and years and years. And it's, as you say, a show, and people feel the need. They have to do it, otherwise people will talk about them, will insult them, and so forth. And people are riddled with this fear, and these are very negative things. And this is not the freedom we started off talking about. We are free, and we can develop, and we can adjust, we can respond. People can't respond. They're not responding. They're just following what is almost forced on them, as you see all word before. Forced to pay so much money for a wedding, forced to wear certain clothes, forced to cover their faces, etc., rather than of their own free will. And I think that's no longer a productive culture. That's something else.
So as Dr. Herman talked about some of those cultural taboos, which are quite negative, if I am to say, to spend so much on an event which is not going to be remembered anytime soon. Like after a month, no one would even remember the kind of taste that the feast had. No, all of these things as a whole, as a part of culture and being practiced without any reason, I don't see any point in that. So do you think that some of those cultural taboos which have been been inculcated in the society need to change or should be changed?
As Omer, the problem is when the institution called religion has become the custodian of, or the animator that drives that program. Therefore, religion must free people. That is why a religion has been around for so many years, that it has sustained. It must free people. That is why other institutions will come in. For example, what we call democracy.
Exactly.
What we call democracy, that it is a pattern that has stayed with us for so long, and has helped human beings to become who they want to become. So religion should allow people to become whom they want to. But of course, with ethical living, moral sharing of of ideas and how we want to live life, and keeping men and women, treating them equally. Those are things that religions have pioneered and championed. And those institutions must champion to bring freedom to human beings, not make them slaves, because religious institutions are by their nature to bring those changes among. And if they becomes the agents of slavery, then I think we are heading for some disaster as a humanity.
So the baby is freedom.
Well, I'm not sure about what kind of freedom, how we define freedom, but baby is also whom we cultivate and create,
Exactly.
Yes, indeed. And I think also the baby is, I tend to agree with you actually, that freedom is an enormously important value to protect and not to throw it away with the bathwater. But there are other ways, like you used another word, human. I think you said to be free and to be human, or maybe not. But anyway, I would add that word is another word, to be really human. No, I think you said religion should make us free. Yes, and that made me think, all right, that's the purpose of religion, to make us free. And I agree with that also. But another way would be religion should make us human, to make us more and more human. Rather than the word free, because freedom needs more discussion. Freedom for, freedom from, or it's an almost philosophical discussion. But human, also the word human. What is human? Again, you can discuss that. But I like that word, human. That's how I tend to discard certain cultural patterns that I feel are not making us free, allowing us to be free, or not allowing us to be human in our interaction, not allowing us to. Human means to grow and to feel more connected with people. If these things are going, if these things suffer, then we're less human, we're less free. And then we should discard those cultural values, or even discard the religion. I think we'd almost go that far, because religion is not always helpful. Because, as I said right at the beginning, a lot of religion is man-made, woman-made. In other words, we humans have made the religion. It's our response. The prophets didn't make the religion. The prophets came to inspire and could have said certain things and lived a certain way, and we responded to that, and that response is the religion. They didn't come with a religion.
That takes me to a point which is a very important point, and I also wanted to personally discuss that point with you, is something related with the myths that are attached to religion. And those myths start right from, like the word you used, some of the words, like, for example, there is an academic discourse on some of the personalities of religion, some of the sacred personality of religions. For example, some of the people have also written book, was Moses real? Did Jesus really exist? Some of the things which have been discussed academically, and then the religion to be tagged or named as something part of a bigger mythology. We know about the Greek mythology, and we don't really believe it to be true, entirely true, but still there have been some legends talking about it. So how do you, or would you perceive this particular angle of mythology, of religious mythology, or some myths that are being attached with religion?
Yes. I think religious mythology is very important and very beautiful and very helpful. And it's in every religion. In Christianity, very strong, and in Judaism, and so I think in all the people, the religions of the book. So it must be in Islam as well. In my view, it's in Islam as well. But there's another. You seem to indicate a negative element or negative connotation, and of course the word myth does have that negative
connotation.
Yeah, it usually has. Yes. And usually when you say myth, people think, oh, something that's not true, something is only a myth.
For example, unicorn is a mythological creature. Yeah. So that gives it's something which is not real.
Not real. No, I agree. That's a common usage of the word. So we have to be aware of this negative use. There's so many myths about Islam. That there's terrorism in Islam. Exactly. That's also a myth, you could say. It's a myth. Christianity Christianity is something else, we say, and it can also be a myth. These general statements, these stereotypes, we say, these are myths in the negative sense. But there's myth in the positive sense, or in the true sense, I don't know, positive, true, in the actual sense, that myths have been part of religion. I mean, actual in that sense. Call it positive or whatever, that's not for me to say. They are just there. I mean, there's so many stories in our holy scriptures which are myths. Yes, and that means that, in my view, they are not historically true.
Okay.
But they present something profound. They have a profound truth to teach, but they are not historically true. For example, but I mean, you may disagree. So I'm not, saying that everyone agrees with this. And I know we're onto a bit of into an area now where people do disagree. So I respect other people's views on this one. So please don't think I'm attacking anyone or any religion. That's not my purpose. Let's talk just about Christianity, because that's what I can talk about. In our Bible, we have a story of Noah, and the flood. Okay, that's a myth which was not necessarily true, right? We have a story about Jonah, who was in a whale, in a fish for 3 days, and then the fish vomited Jonah out in some place. Okay, again, that's a myth in our understanding. In modern scholarship, it's not just me, it's modern scholarship agrees on the whole that these are myths. Even Adam is a myth, the story of the creation. In the Bible, I'm talking about the Bible, right? The story of Adam and Eve in the garden, the way they walked around there, and that God spoke with them, and so forth and so forth. God actually walked with them in the garden, it says. That's mythological language. Mythological doesn't mean it's untrue. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't mean that. It means it did not historically happen in that literal way, that God actually walked with them in the garden. No, it's trying to say that God was close to them. Yeah, so this is just an image, or we say a metaphor. It's a way of speaking about some reality which cannot be easily explained. How God is related to human beings. How do you explain that? So you used mythological language, and that Noah collected all these animals in a ship, and then the flood saved them, and then and many people were killed, drowned in that flood. Is a statement that the world had gone to pieces. The world was murderous and evil, and God and a new start. So a new start was necessary, and whether this actually happened is another question.
But doesn't that take us to the most important point of hermeneutics, or the interpretation of the religious text? For that matter, whatever you have told me has taken me to that realm of hermeneutics, of how to present a particular religious narrative. For example, the narratives that you have told, let me take only one example out of the Bible. There are many things being mentioned in the Bible that the Son of God, this word, and you also have interpreted it to be the beloved of God, the one who is quite very near to the God, beloved, near. But some people have taken it to be literal, the literal meaning of the word son as we take it, that as somebody, if we call them a son, has to be a begotten son.
That goes back to our earlier conversation, how important words are, how important language is, and you can't just change words too easily. And some people have a greater facility with different words than others. Others feel insecure if you drop that word son and you say Jesus was the beloved of God, people feel insecure because they were used to that word son. But of course you're right, that's what it means. And the word son is not essential. No, there's no such essential word that expresses the reality of Jesus. No word would express the reality of Jesus completely. So the Son is a metaphor. Right. It's a metaphor. It's a way of speaking about the identity of Jesus, which has been acceptable for many, many years. We have to respect it for that reason, because we've inherited it from centuries. So we can't just drop it or mock it or something, or say it's wrong. That would be not acceptable. But it's, as you said, we have to find the meaning. And the meaning for today is maybe more suitable for some people, especially for Muslims who don't like that word son for Jesus, the Son of God for Jesus. Well, let them use the word beloved. That's fine. I don't have any problem with that. In fact, that's probably the way to go.
Now, what Dr. Herman said that, for example, there have been some myths or mythological stories being told in religion, and for that matter, in the sacred text as well, and people take it as it is being mentioned, as in the literal meanings. And vast majority of scholars, should I say, those vast majority of scholars agree that the Ark of Noah and the flood of Noah, each and everything was literal and real. For some reason, as Dr. Herman also talked about, that it can be interpreted otherwise as well, or taken otherwise. So how can we find a balance between the two narratives? That can we or should we try to reinterpret in what has been believed before, or should it stay as it is, according to you?
You see, we come to another completely a different realm of how Christians would understand Scripture, how Hindus would understand Scripture, and how Muslims and Jews will understand their own Scripture. Scripture, whether the Holy Scriptures are understood and read, interpreted by these people in completely different ways. For Christians, it is a text of texts. For Muslims, it is just a text. For Buddhists, it is text upon a text. For Hindus, it is thousands of texts, written, unwritten.
For atheists, these are just letters.
Yes. So, what about myth and mythological sort of narrative? That it is not untrue, but that writer of that time, that's the only way, that's perhaps the only way to express that flabbergasted him. He didn't know how to explain it in another way, and he was awestruck by this story that had been verbally available for them. Let me put this in writing. Verbally, you can act the narrative, sing the narrative, poetically recite the narrative. But when it is textualized, it is a different ball game. And the author, whoever that was, had to find a way that was available. In my view, he is not writing something untrue, unreal. But the way he or she had written it is with the means that he or she has had. So, how are we going to read that? Are we going to say it true or it is false? But the sacred author has written it in that parameter, in that simile, in that way. In that sense, the story itself is precious story. And we cannot bash it. We cannot bash it. That's the only way that man has written it. So we have to find new ways and means of understanding it in our way.
And that takes me to a similar question, like you mentioned, like I have to, we have to strike a balance. For example, like if you talk about a particular approach of viewing a particular myth that has been associated with religion. For example, you talked about Jonah being in the valley of whale. Doesn't sound like scientifically believable for some people, for that matter. But to say, if we start taking every event that has been mentioned in the religious texts and we start saying and interpreting or labeling them as myths, and those myths might not necessarily be true occurrings. So wouldn't you say that these events or these interpretation might also make religion to be entirely called as a myth? That religion is only a myth? Wouldn't it make the majesty of God or undermine the majesty of God?
I don't have an issue with that. If you say religion is a myth, it's fine.
What about the majesty of God?
Everything is myth. The majesty of God is a myth also. Yes, of course. Why? Because we cannot express it, as Dr. Shanti said. We have no other way of expressing it. The majesty of God is so great, we have no conceptual way of expressing it. So we need a myth. Myth is a story, which is, and the truth is in that story. It's not a question of it's true or false. Myths have a profound truth, profound truth. And that's the only way that the authors could express this profound truth, that God is majestic, is transcendent. How do you say that? Is that enough to say he's transcendent? What does that mean? Nobody knows what that means. Majestic, what does that mean? Everyone has his own idea of what that means. So tell a story. Tell a story about it. No, there's no story about that one I can think of just now, but maybe the miracles of Jesus or something like that. These are all myths. And
so you believe that miracles should be seen as myths?
No, I don't believe they should be. I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying things should be, but I interpret them as myths. Yes, I'm not telling other people that they should be doing this. It's not my job. So, but I think that the vast majority of religion, the vast majority, if not everything, our language about God is mythological. But that's a rather radical statement. So if you want to disagree, go ahead. But that's something to think about. And so I'm not being dogmatic, right? I don't want to say,
I think I would differentiate between a couple of things. For example, if there is a story and you, as you say, that they've been described as mythological or something in a way it looks a myth, but then there is a belief that the part that comes to the belief of a person, of a belief of a religion that has been very dogmatic in nature. For example, God is transcendent. He is beyond us. He is superior, a superior being, something related to the belief of that has been mentioned inside a religion that takes us to a differentiation between two parts.
Yeah, let me give you how we were still struggling with the Judeo-Christian and Islamo. But if you go to the Greek world, you had goddess of wine. Every single human phenomenon had a god. No, that's how the Greek mind works. So if you go to Japan now, they have Shinto. So you have a supermarket of gents wear. It has a separate kami, a separate god, in charge of gentleman suits. So every floor has a kami who is in charge of that floor. And if you come to Sri Lanka, the famous mountain, holy mountain,
Adam's Place?
Adam's Peak, and the Muslims and the Jews think that it is the foot of the Adam. And the Buddhists think that it is the foot of the Buddha.
By the way, have you seen it?
Of course, yes.
Oh, yeah.
And then, but the Hindus would say, okay, but the rock, the mountain, the one who is in charge of the mountain is our God. Is a regional God who will look after.
Yeah, I don't think...
Is it true or false? No, but that is the story, narrative. And it is beautiful because that place, all those three traditions are united in this whole thing.
Beautiful story, beautiful story. An example from Sri Lanka, and very useful. And I think, just to clarify what I was saying before, that because God is supreme and transcendent, all our language about God must be in mythological or metaphorical or symbolic. These are language.
Why not literal?
Huh?
Why not literal? Literal language.
Because how can it be literal? Literal means you can actually see and touch. We cannot see or touch God.
If a person can feel God's mercy upon him, it is literal. It is literal that he's is not sick anymore. He used to be, and he can feel the mercy.
That's something about the person. I'm talking about God, right? Yeah, you're right. It's a good point also, that God's influence on us or effect on us,
that is literal.
That's literal. Yeah, that could be literal. It's not just feeling or myth or something like that, but it's not symbolic, only symbolic. So people, but again, you can question that too, to what extent is it literal? What do you really mean? People say that God touched me. Is that literal? I mean, it's kind of literal. God doesn't touch me.
So experience.
Yeah, that experience.
That experience. That experience is literal in the sense of real. Yeah. I think even the word literal there is also a bit strange. It's not so very helpful. I don't think so. But certainly, yeah, the experience of God can be real. I agree with that. Yes, I do. But the language about God is not like that. Any language about God. And if religion is language about God, then religion is also mythological. And it doesn't make it less true. It makes it more true for me. It makes it acceptable as a profound truth beyond me. It's beyond me. As I said before, religion comes from that sense of something holy being beyond me. So if I start talking about literal truth, then I've put this beyond right in my own field, and I've reduced or diminished religion to make it my own security blanket.
One final question that I will go first with Dr. Shanti, and the same one would come to you as well. Should we see the myths that has been, as we talked about, should we use the word myth or not? I'm not even sure about it, but should we go about a scientific approach in investigating some of the myths? Like I've seen some people, mostly archaeologists, like you talked about your place. I haven't seen it, by the way. I have heard greatly about it, the Adams place, or it's a very touristic place, I believe so. And there is another place, like you talked about the Ark of Noah, that is being allegedly found somewhere near Turkey or something. I'm not sure of the place. So near a mountain, I forgot the name of the mountain though. I will, if it comes, I will tell. So there has been some scientific investigation about it to confirm or to just see that what exactly it is. Would you believe this kind of an approach is appropriate in order to investigate something about the myths?
A scientific approach to understanding myths, mega narratives.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't know how far science can do that. In the Christian scriptures, we have Bultmann, Rudolf Bultmann, who calls it in Second Testament analysis, in scripture analysis, he calls it demythologization. You demythologize. But he didn't go so far. Because we need the myth. Without it, it is so tasteless. If it is only literary format, and is that all about us?
Okay.
We must have stories. Story about the Aborigines. They have about 14 creation narratives. Aborigines have. We have hundreds of creation narratives, but we are sometimes stuck with one. But it's not that we need all those multiple layers of creation narratives, because we have such a diversity of stories for what it means to be human.
So you're saying that keeping in mind the human nature, the myths are important.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think another aspect of this, if we begin to value myths, then we begin to value other religions, whose myths are very different from the myths in my religion.
Then what about the scientific approach? That was the last question. What about the scientific approach in investigating the myths?
I don't think it's possible to apply a scientific approach to investigate religion or myths.
Okay.
If you mean by scientific approach empirical, that means experimental, that you can actually sort of demonstrate certain things in a rational way. I think you're out of religion. You're outside religion. Religion is precisely about that which you cannot demonstrate in this way. Religion is a sense of the sacred, which is beyond our rational faculties.
Well, we can go on and on and on, but we need to keep the time restraints as well. But I am happy at the fact that this being a very multicultural sort of gathering, and we have agreed at a point at least that we need to come up to an understanding of human nature, what we as people are doing in our societies. The negative parts which you talked about are very important, that we need get rid of the society, which are not ideally to
taboos, you mean?
Exactly, the taboos. And on the other hand, to understand what a myth exactly is, and a myth should or should not be the opposite of reality at all times.
Exactly.
It should not be.
No.
So that is what I have also learned from this particular podcast, and I believe all of the viewers would also have learned so many things. And I also thank you, both of you, once again for being here. And for the next time, until the next time, I'm signing off. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.